right. Well, I was before we actually started this podcast, I was apologizing to the next guest because a real true friend would actually just call a person or text a person, say, "Hey, man, what's up? How you doing?" What I do is this person right here, the muskie maniac, Pete Maina. I'm a big fan of this dude. I'm sure people listening are as well, or watching the podcast. Pete is just a great, fantastic dude. I've enjoyed spending so much time in a boat with this guy. And I really should just reach out more instead of texting Pete and saying, "Hey, will you do a podcast with me?" But so Pete, I apologize for that, but honestly, I love doing these podcasts with you, and I just figure, when we do have a conversation, it usually, not doing a podcast, these conversations could get really long, and I've thought sometimes they should be recorded, so I'm like, you know what? Let's do a podcast and record it. So that's what we're going to do. I've always enjoyed our conversation. So let's get this podcast started. Another fishing podcast. Here we go.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
All right, dude. Yeah, how about that intro, huh? Yeah, it's been a little while. It's so crazy, man. I just don't know where the hell time goes. And it's such a cliche to say, as you get older, time goes by faster. But legitimately, dude, it really, really does. And it's scary. And I really do mean this when I say, I think the world of you, dude. And I really am terrible with keeping in touch. But part of it is just the fact that it's I don't know where the hell time goes. And so when I now talk to you after it's been, a year or something, it doesn't even feel like it's, been that long, dude. So I do want to, it's good to see you. You look like you're doing great, and I hope life's been treating you well, dude. So what's been going on in your world, I guess? Let's just start there.
Well, quickly, first of all, you shouldn't feel that guilty because I've always had a great time with you, many hours in the boat, and I probably should have contacted you as well. And it's not like I texted you or called you, which I kind of feel bad about too, but life is just busy. I don't know what goes on. I still think it's those little phones that we didn't used to have. But whatever, that's life. That's what it is now. What I have been doing is mainly fishing through the month of September, although I just got back from a duck hunting trip in North Dakota, and it's kind of interesting. I won't elaborate much on the ducks. We shot enough and came home, but I normally purposely time my duck hunting trip basically second week of October, because I kind of try and avoid the turnover period here on this latitude, because overall the fishing's a little bit tougher and the fish are harder to pattern. So normally by the time I get home from my North Dakota duck hunt, the turnover is generally just about wrapping up. And oddly, this year, from a technical standpoint anyway, with deeper lakes that actually stratify, it has not even started yet. So we definitely have a unique year going here. The temps have definitely been warmer than normal. And I've failed really in all the years I've been doing this. I started by taking detailed records of everything. But if it's not the latest the lakes have ever started to turn, it's number 2. I mean, it's really late this year. It's pretty weird. The water temps are still basically averaging 69 right now. Excuse me, 59. Yeah. And the lakes start to turn 58, 57, with wind and cold. So.
Okay, yeah. So describe that. Obviously, fish behavior is going to be affected by that. But someone who is not familiar with the turnover period, it's a pretty. I mean, everybody up north pretty much knows what's going on in the fall turnover. As far as if you're a serious fisherman up here, you kind of got to understand that that's a big deal. But someone who's not familiar with that, like what is happening in the water column as far as temperatures, and then how does that affect fishing, as especially muskies? What's going on there?
Well, first of all, warm water gets to be on top. So over the heat of the summer, you get the upper layer is obviously the hottest, and then you have a layer called the thermocline in deeper lakes that technically stratify. By the way, from a technical standpoint, this doesn't occur on real shallow lakes or any system, obviously, with current rolling through or this, that, and the other. From a technical standpoint, it doesn't occur. These are lakes that are generally deeper where you get the stratification. And that thermocline layer is usually about, about 35% of the max depth, somewhere around there, 35, 40. But anyway, at the end of the day, the bottom line is once the upper water is lower than the below water that's been sitting there all summer, and in this latitude is generally about 58, 57, then everything mixes with the wind and stuff. And so now you've got a situation where you've had a lower level with super low oxygen levels, and then this drastic area of change to cooler water in the thermocline. And now all of a sudden everything mixes, and it's basically all the same temperature, very similar oxygen levels, and it just stirs everything up. You get a lot of bottom sediment and this, that, and the other. And the bottom line is the fish just kind of move all over. Whatever patterns that were previous, you can literally, starting at that point, you may find fish in real deep water even, but deeper water, mid-range, super shallow, just about everywhere the bait fish patterns change. And you can generally see that if, all the years I literally guided every day, that was something that was quite obvious when it would actually happen. Everything just moves, and it's a time of confusion. It's not that fish completely quit eating or anything like that, but it's generally just a tougher time.
So it's basically these fish just go, and this is just not just muskie fishing. It's just everything just kind of can go throughout the water column, because there's no there. I mean the depth, or the temperature rather, is pretty much just the same throughout the whole system. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So they, and some typically stay in certain areas, but yeah, stuff just moves. I mean, it's a major movement that isn't completely predictable. I mean, I always say during turnover, you can literally target everything from 6 inches of water to, all the way out and deep, and they sometimes can be suspended. They're kind of all over the place, and the targets keep moving. So I think that's what makes it a little tougher. And then there's maybe something to the visibility factor. Everything gets darker, everything mixes. There's leftover algae on some lakes, and there's all kinds of different factors. But at the end of the day, I generally play the game when you're in an area like this. And of course, over where you're at is very similar. You've got different sized lakes. You've got smaller lakes. You've got rivers. You've got the real big, deep, clear lakes. So normally in fishing wise, I'll play the game to try and be fishing pre-turnover. So I'm concentrating on the smaller, shallower lakes as you start getting close to turnover there. And generally our deepest, clearest lakes will start to turn over, on average 10 days later. So then you can kind of play that game when your smaller lakes start to turn. You hop off of those, jump on the little bit bigger lakes that are still pre-turnover, and just kind of go on up the line to the deepest lakes at the end until they turn, and then you turn around and go back to
the shallow stuff.
The shallow ones again, because they're probably, most of the turnover effects are over there already.
I see. Well, that makes sense. So if you don't have that opportunity to do that, to jump lakes, maybe you're in an area where you're kind of just like screwed. You got one body of water, that's really how best do you handle a situation like that where you're like, okay, I got a fish, I got one body of water with muskies in it that I can fish. How would you handle that, a body of water like that where you have to fish through that turnover? What would you do?
You just open up your mind to everything and start hitting stuff. You can't discount anything. And it obviously with a lake that's got a majority of shallower structures, you're definitely going to start there. But if if you're fishing for a while and you're just strictly sticking to the shallow stuff, you're making a big mistake. So you just, you got to go out and start checking secondary breaks. And deep part bottom, all of those kinds of things are most likely for muskies. You generally won't immediately have a bunch of fish laying on the bottom in the mud, but you really gotta check it all, and the lakes are all different. Now, if you were stuck on this, one lake, that'd be something. Obviously, if it was your home area, you'd figure those patterns out. I would think it'd be typical. I haven't really ever done that around here because I've always done with so many lakes that I have. I literally lake hop and play that game. But I would think you'd probably be able to develop patterns if you were fishing the same lake all the time through the different temperatures as to where those fish are most likely to be, though.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I've just I don't know. That's always like the turnover's always been a really interesting period, up here since I moved, up north, because it's just it's a big deal for obvious reasons. So, yeah, I like your strategy of just like hopping lakes. I think that's the best strategy if you're fortunate to live around a lot of lakes, which both of us are, But yeah, this is a really, I love the fall time. I don't know. It's probably a little bit cliche to think that, the fish are putting on the fall feed bag, and, once you get through the turnover period, I mean, what is it like? I've always been interested too, like in fall, what muskies are doing, or, why it kind of seems like, and maybe this is just, I don't know. It just seems like fall, like live bait becomes more of a factor in the fall. Like, what is that? Like, you're not doing the sucker thing so much in summer, are you? It just basically becomes more of a fall thing.
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, live bait works all year. And one, fallacy, I guess, of that's been said for years is muskies won't eat dead stuff. They actually will do that too. I've really only done it on purpose in the winter when I'm technically fishing for northern pike, but you will catch muskies on dead bait. And I'll never forget years ago, I literally watched it happen one time in open water where I could see a dead fish laying on the bottom. I honestly don't remember if it was a sucker or what it was, but I literally on a sunny day saw a muskie start nosing up to it and grabbed it and swallowed it. So wow. I'm like, okay, well,
interesting. Yeah,
that tells me something. But it's all an efficiency thing. They're definitely more likely in colder water, spring or fall, to eat live bait. But what you find is you finally get to a point at a certain time in the fall, and that generally starts with turnover, where you have to go a lot slower dragging live bait. So you're reducing your water coverage on an average by half. Sometimes even more than that when you're fishing real deep vertically. You got to crawl along even a little bit slower to really cover everything. So when the lure bite is really good, and what does happen when the water's cold, your bucktail bite, your topwater bite, crankbaits, jerkbaits, soft plastics are generally best in the fall, but certain areas are worse than others. But in a lot of cases, those artificial bites start to tail off, and you just get to the point from an odds standpoint, it's really worth putting that live bait into the mix. Now, the other problem you have in summer, everybody knows about heat. I've talked about this for years. warning about handling fish and catch and release. It doesn't matter what species, from bass to trout to, everything in there. There's more of an issue with them potentially dying from overhandling and time out of the water. Well, the same thing happens with a darn sucker. You got to keep them alive. And in the summer, especially on weedy lakes, they're getting stuck more. And with the hot water, they just can't take as much of getting drug around a lake by their nose. And now you have your suckers are dying on you. And by the way, they cost $15 a piece now.
Wow. Yeah, that's no messing around.
Just at the grocery store, it's also at the minnow store. So it's just one of those things. It's an odds deal, and that's how I've learned to play. Believe me, I tried live bait all year long, and decades ago, I basically quit running suckers in the summer just from an efficiency standpoint.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize you had done that. What's like? I know this is probably kind of a frustrating question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, if there is like one kind of, let's say someone's newer to muskie fishing, and they're getting out in the fall here, and like if you could give like one or distill some tips or like just good information on like like best info like on how to be a better muskie fisherman in fall, is there anything that just kind of pops in your mind that, oh yeah, it's this, or is it there's just too much stuff?
Well,
yeah, great question, right?
A lot of stuff. The crazy thing now is that it really depends a lot on whether or not you're using the new technology to a large degree or not. Some people choose to, some people choose not to. If you can really figure out that location thing so much faster with the the combination of side imaging and forward-facing sonar these days. A big part of the thing was always location. I mean, for years, that was the majority of what I'd talk about in seminars and writing and this, that, and the other. And to a certain extent, that can be largely taken away now, but you still got to figure out, even if you find them, generally always, before the advanced electronics, I would always say I find the food. I would concentrate more on finding concentrations of what they want to eat, whether it could be bass, walleye, suckers, whitefish, cisco, whatever it is. They go where there's a lot of anything to eat, and actually perch. Perch is a big part of muskies' diet where they exist, which is most of the waters. But if you find a lot of it, that's where they're going to be, right?
Okay.
But then now it's more of a trying to figure out the timing and the lure presentations, obviously in this case in the fall, including live bait, that'll get fish to trigger. And with all of the advancements in everything with the electronics and knowledge and the mapping, there's so many things that bring advantages these days that these fish get beat on way more than they used to. Fish can't hide anymore, so they're way more educated than they used to be. So the science of trying to figure out what in the hell will actually make them eat and what they're in the mood for, it's like the live bait thing. It's kind of funny. You'll have your days out there on the water where you hate the fact that you have been dragging them because they've cost you a whole bunch of money. You rig them all day, you run them all day, you pull them out of trouble, this, that, and the other, and you don't even get a bite on them. And you hate them by the end of those days. You're wondering how many more fish you could have caught if you only ran the artificial lures, right? But then you'll get sometimes multiple days in a row, especially in Wisconsin here. For some reason, they always have liked them. It seems more than I've fished a lot of states, as you know. I've fished more places than any man alive, frankly, trying to catch a damn muskie. But there, all of a sudden you'll get those days where, they're on them, and they will totally ignore artificial lures. And then you see all kinds of patterns with just certain kinds of lures. It's amazing how specific they can be. And I really think that some days you literally run out of time trying the right thing, especially with a lower density fish like a muskie. It's amazing how particular they can be. One day it might be a glider jerk bait, and I remember times where I literally didn't try, let's say that, or whatever the bait is, and you talk to a couple of buddies, and yeah, they had a tough day too, but somewhere along the line, somebody tried a glider, and that was the only thing they were biting on. Yeah, and you tried soft plastics, and you tried chop jerk baits that go up and down and sideways, but they, a glider's a specific, generally in the same plane, walk the dog type lure, and that's what they wanted that day. And it really is, that's to me gotten to be the biggest game is presentations now, to try and figure out what'll trigger them on a given day.
Interesting. Yeah, you brought up, and I know that this is what everybody's talking about, and it's been this way for a while, but it's because it's so consequential to just, I mean, everything that's, going on, in fishing right now. I mean, are you, I guess I should ask, are you running forward-facing sonar now? Or are you like, what's your, thoughts on it? Like, are you like the hell with it, I'm never using this forward-facing sonar? Or are you using it? Like, just I haven't talked to you in a while, I guess, about it.
Yeah, I made the decision very simply. I'm, I guess you could say upset to a certain extent, because it's really upset the fishing industry, but I don't blame anyone at all for using it. It's absolutely amazing. If there's an argument about it, it's too good, but that's what the electronic companies are supposed to be doing, I guess, right? So
right. Yeah,
I can't be mad at, they're supposed to make fishing easier. That's what they've been doing and advertising for years, and there's a market for it. And I certainly can't look down on anyone that uses it. I've used it myself. It's amazing. So it's interesting to me. I talked to a lot of young guys who literally have gotten to the point where they would rather not use it personally, but they almost have to, especially if they're in a guide business or something like that, where they're competing. It is that profoundly effective in a lot of cases, helping you find things that you literally would fall far enough behind unless you had I'm sure there's this clientele out there, because I know a lot of people that don't like using it. So you could maybe take that angle. But as far as keeping up catching fish, if you don't keep up with the technology, you're not going to catch as many. Me personally, I've gotten to the point now where I will not do it muskie fishing, just because I'm old school and I don't enjoy it. It's kind of like, to me, to some degree, it's like sitting in a tent next to a food plot in a sprayer spraying corn trying to shoot a deer, and there's 74 of them there, and you just got to figure out which one's the biggest one you want to shoot without shooting 3 at a time, kind of thing. I love the shock of muskie fishing.
Absolutely. Well, that's a lot of what fishing is. Let's be honest.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I got a last minute hit from about a 48 incher that had no idea it was coming whatsoever. And I was just about pulling the lure out of it. It was one of, as long as I've done this and all the fish I've caught, it absolutely scared the crap out of me last minute. The only thing I had to say for myself is I made a good recovery, but I was literally a split second from screwing up, and I got saved by the fish. But you would have known that fish was coming. You would have seen that. And I'm willing for me personally, what I like to do, I go without it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. So I recently got forward-facing sonar on my boat this summer, and and I've been using it. I used it on Friday. I just went out to a lake I don't have a whole lot of experience on. Went out there, and I just was kind of, I was running a couple of holes, like a deeper section of the lake. It was in a kind of a bay of a lake, but a couple of holes on this body of water. And I was just, they're like 35-foot holes. I think they're topping out at 30, 35, something like that. And I was just going around them, going around the weed edges that was around that hole, that was breaking off into deep water, and just imaging that and just seeing what was out there, And these weren't big holes or anything, but they were big enough. You could probably get 2 or 3 boats in there. 4, it was enough. Probably more than that. 5, it was enough where I could just kind of go around the inside perimeter, if that makes sense, of that hole, of that weed edge, and kind of the boat would be in deep water, and I would be working up to that weed edge and just scan it. And then just go around that whole hole doing that and seeing what was living off of that, weed edge and breaking off into deeper water. And then it would allow me to also scan into the abysmal plane, or the abyssal, the abyssal plane, it's just basically just to see, like, what is there anything living out in no man's land there, And in that regard, it is unbelievable, Pete. And I'm sure you've messed around with it enough to see that all of a sudden it's like, to be able to have eyes throughout the whole water column around your boat, to basically get, like, it's essentially, it's just like, what's the, there's like a military term for it. It's just like having complete knowledge of it's situational awareness. It's complete situational awareness around your boat. And to know, oh yeah, there's actually like 3 fish out in that very deep basin area there. And then you see it. It's a small enough hole where then you can see it on the forward-facing sonar start rising up as you're scanning out past and then it's scanning out past the deep water to that shallower side. So you're able to scan the whole thing and kind of have an idea what is around you. And to be messing with it for the first time for me was like, oh my God. And I'd filmed it so much, like in bass tournaments, that I already knew that was going on, But to do it yourself is just, to spend some time with it and do it yourself and to go, oh yeah, man, I'd like have a complete, understanding of kind of like the biomass around me right now. And like, and it's almost like, it's like God mode. And that's a little scary, especially I'm sure, for muskies, like you said, that's just there's just not a lot of muskies, because they're the top of the line predator in the system. And I don't know, I've got real mixed feelings about it. I've had it since it really came out, but it's just for a fisherman though, to kind of have an understanding of like, oh, fish are relating. There's all of a sudden you kind of have, there's more fish suspending just out in nothing than you'd think there would be, and that's what live sonar's shown us. It's like, what was it like the first time you used it? Were you just like, what in the hell is going on here? I really like Friday, a couple days ago or whatever, a few days ago. It's really the first time where I really was really kind of getting in depth with it, and it's quite something.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is amazing. You can literally drive around and look for fish, and a lot of people do it. It's a big argument in the muskie industry, but it's like, for trolling too. I've been tempted to use it. I haven't done it, but it's nuts when you think about it, because you can pick off fish that are off to the side. You'd know when you had a follow. For years, I always figured, trolling, you probably have follows for quite a while. And obviously, if you know the follow is there, you can do something with your boat to trigger that fish. You pattern everything quicker. And then obviously, if you see one off to the side 100 feet over there, you'd never have known before. But at that point, if you see it there, obviously you're going to spin a quick circle. You're going to get over there and you're going to run your baits right through it, And then the whole idea of being able to literally watch, seeing the exact reaction of the fish. Now that if you're casting, if you casted to it, you can literally figure out what they're in the mood for, how they're reacting to everything they're doing. It is amazing.
Well, like what kind of, and it's kind of like sort of just like rehashing the same talking points, but when you really first I really was, I've had the thing installed since like June or something, but I really was fishing with it 3 days ago, and not only do you get a greater sense of what is happening in the water, just with life in general down there, with it, because you're basically spying on the life forms that are in the water. Like, you can see how they're setting up, and you see them swimming around, and and so it's super valuable just in that aspect for a fisherman, to have that. But then you touched upon it, the ability, and I caught like I think it was a crappie that I kind of coaxed into biting, but the ability to rip out a cast at a distance, and then to see how that fish way at a distance is reacting to your presentation, and to be able to coax that fish that's still way out. And seeing, it's not,
right.
It's kind of not interesting. And then, and then to then find that presentation, that kind of retrieve that's like, it's interested in, and then boom, connect. That is so damn powerful, dude. And it really kind of hits you. It's one thing for me to have been like just filming so much of this happening, but to actually do it yourself. And just, it really kind of hits home. It's like, yeah, this is like God mode, man. It is like super powerful technology, and do you think there's going to be, regs on this, like special regulations coming down the pike, or what do you think's going to happen?
No, I have no idea. But other than I am worried, that's my biggest concern, frankly, is just simply, can fisheries handle it? And I don't see anything really happening to get a handle on that. I've begged Wisconsin and Minnesota DNR guys to at least give us some lakes where, to simplify it, that, you can have all the gear in the world in your boat, but you just can't use it on those particular lakes. You got to have your units shut off, and it'll self-police for the most part. A lot of people said it'd be hard to keep track of it and bust people. I don't think so at all. If everybody else that has gone there agrees to it, obviously you're not going to be able to hide your screens. If you're driving around scanning, you're going to be obvious. At least then we would have an idea after a couple of years, comparing it to lakes where they're being used, and the use of it, because it is so cool and amazing, is growing every year. I see it everywhere. For the first time, I fished Ohio for the first time in quite a few years, and I was surprised there was actually more of it down there, trollers and casters, than I even expected. So it's getting more popular, and can the fisheries handle it? Because at the end of the day, there's going to be way more fish being caught because of it. And obviously educated, and X amount of fish that get caught are going to perish, especially in warmer water. So, that's the only scary thing. And I think it can be kept up with. through stocking, but like both Wisconsin and Minnesota have been, at least traditionally, and certainly so with muskies, they're kind of like, well, the goals have been sometimes we stock and this, that, and the other, but the goals have been natural reproducing fisheries. Once we get a lake stocked up a little bit, we don't really want to stock anymore. We want to leave it to itself and natural strains and all these different things. I personally don't think that's possible. Certainly with muskies, to maintain a fishery where a majority of people are using technology. We've already got the amazing mapping. First of all, you're on a lake. It used to be there was a major learning curve. Now you got exact lines drawn. You know where all the structure is. You can walk in for the first time in your life. So you've already got that advantage. All you're doing is figuring out the particular lake patterns then, but now you add the forward facing, all the different stuff. You're right on it. You can literally just walk in and know exactly where the damn fish are right away and pounce on them and can that hold. And then for species like walleye, smallmouth, where some live bait use, at least around here, is popular with leeches and stuff like that. You get a certain amount of mortality by, especially people with slip bobbers. I hate to say it, but some people are lazy. They're not watching real close, and they're not making sure they set the hook right away, and you get gullet hook fish. Well, the majority of those die, or they die slowly because they can't ingest anything because they got a hook stuck in their gullet when they cut the line, right? So, to me, that level of effectiveness is going to require more fish than I think can occur naturally.
Yeah, and you kind of, I've become probably more of a libertarian as I've gotten older. For sure I have. And so I'm like, I don't, when I hear like more regulations, I get a little like, I'm just like, government in general, it's just like I've become more like a libertarian. I probably am a libertarian, actually. But I kind of like, okay, like what is the state of Minnesota going to do? Is there going to be like a forward facing sonar season? Could you see something like that happening? That's to me sounds like it's like that would be a possibility, I guess, is what they would try to do. I don't know.
That's the hardest thing. I mean, unless you do something like I said, where you have lakes where people can't use it, to give people a different option, and then to obviously
I like that.
That to me is the simplest thing that would actually solve something and give us an idea, because it would take a few years, but yeah, how do you do that? And as every year goes by, you could limit certain times a year. Obviously, it would make the most sense in summer when the temperatures are warmer. To me, if you're going to have a period where you were going to outlaw it, you'd probably save a hell of a lot more fish then than during the cold period when they're much more resilient. But, how, and especially as this is getting more popular and more people have spent a bunch of money to go buy this stuff now, and then all of a sudden we get a big throw your hands up and we're going to outlaw it now.
I know.
I mean,
I know. Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know that anybody in the fishing industry really kind of saw this, coming. It's in some ways, it's just kind of like a bomb being dropped. It's such a big deal, because the technology is just so good. And so, you have it on the forward mode. Different manufacturers have different ways of saying this, but, the forward mode is like your typical like forward-facing sonar mode. But then, these anglers pairing it up with perspective mode. I think some manufacturers call it panoramic mode or whatever. And so it's basically turning that transducer flat, and then it gives you in shallow water. It's shallow water's relative, but I think it's gonna image just better in shallow water in that mode, that perspective mode. Well, basically what it is it's It's a bird's eye view, a live bird's eye view of everything that's in front of your boat. Like imagine if you had a drone or a bird, you're looking, down at the lake and you see where fish are positioned, you see them swimming. It's just the most unbelievable, mode for forward-facing sonar. And then pair that up with just that regular mode. I call it God mode. Honestly, I really do. It's just like you have complete situational awareness throughout the water column, and like the imaging of it, it's so good. It's like, and I tend to say that I think as far as in the forward-facing sonar game, it's almost like, can't we? I was just saying this the other day. It's like, can't we just call it forward sonar? Do we have to add the facing part? Like, it's getting a little. And then that makes like the hummingbird people are, they're, you don't want to upset the Lowrance people because hummingbird calls it live, mega live. And then
right.
So it's just call it forward sonar, everybody. We don't need the facing. What's the facing part anyway? Forward sonar. Let's try to do that. It's just, what are we doing? It's such a, anyway, it's a word in there that we don't need. Anyway, okay.
Right.
So, but it's so powerful. It's like, it's those, especially with two transducers using it, in different modes, just, it gives you such an, the imaging of the water column, which just in it's live. So you're seeing fish moving. You're seeing obviously how they're positioned. You're seeing them in areas where you never thought you'd see them before. And that's what's happening in bass fishing a lot, is guys that are just scanning out in, deep water and just suspended bass and then targeting them. They've never been fished for really before and catching them. So it's just, as that price point comes down, and I know these are all talking points people have, touched upon before, but it is quite something. But as that price point comes down, there's going to be more people with it, and it's just, and people are going to get better and better at it. It's just weird. It's just weird that we're having to deal with this in fishing, because it's such a, fishing was never about, before, knowing what was throughout the water column. Just knowing, like, it was some of the stuff that made fishing so great was that it was not knowing, and the predicting, and they're going to be there, the anticipation, and now that kind of goes away. Not kind of, it goes away if you're using it, which is weird, because that was always for me just like a really big deal with fishing. I always just love the anticipation, the not knowing, the being shocked, what you're talking about earlier. And so now to have sonar that basically, kind of just tells you everything that's going on around you under the water, it's just strange to have to, to ponder these things, like, and what are we going to do about this? And then, hey, Pete, let's add AI to the mix, It's like, where the hell are we going with everything? So the other thing I was going to ask you, so in muskie fishing, so I've noticed this in walleye fishing, covering walleye tournaments. It seems like trolling is less of a thing now. And these guys will go out with a forward sonar. See, I said forward sonar. I'm not going to say forward-facing sonar anymore. I'm going to do my darndest to not say forward-facing sonar. So with forward sonar, they'll go out. It's like I'm noticing it seems like not a lot of people are trolling anymore. They go out and they'll even these big, Great Lakes systems, where before they'd be trolling, now they're going out and they're just scanning, with forward sonar. And then just like the bass guys do, using they call them jig head minnows in the bass world, but very similar situation, but sometimes in walleye fishing, they'll use live bait too, but very similar presentations. And so is that happening in the muskie world too, are you noticing?
Well, yeah. The people that use it, there's a big thing against sharpshooting, I guess, and some are trying to back off that. Just to define that, that's where you basically drive around with multiple transducers at 6 miles an hour and literally look for them and then put on the brakes and cast them when you find them. That's kind of looked down on, but majority of people still use it all the time casting, and they're looking everywhere. So there's still a whole bunch of fish that are getting targeted that wouldn't have been otherwise. So they're working a structure like traditionally you would normally do, but they're also seeing fish out off the backside or parallel or that otherwise would have never had a lure thrown at them. So I think it has overall in muskie fishing too reduced trollers, because you could argue, even though I pointed out some advantages that really help with trolling, with the forward facing as well, or sorry, just forward. But but anyway, yeah, it has really kind of changed that. There is definitely less of the trolling now on muskie stuff too, just because it is, I guess, more efficient to literally be able to do it casting, to be able to find them that quick and then drop stuff right on their head, whether it be a live bait. That's one thing we talked about live bait at the start of this. I've seen people, obviously once you get good at it, the size of the fish within inches. So when they find a big fish, I've seen a lot of guys, they'll literally just wait them out with live bait. I don't know how many times, and I never saw it before till 3 years ago. You see guys in the fall and they're literally camping with a whole bunch of meat in the water. And at first I didn't get it. I'm like, what in the hell are these guys? Aren't casting. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting there talking. And then you realize what's going on. They've got a big one spotted and they're just hanging by it. And they figure sooner or later it's going to grab that piece of meat, right? So,
no kidding.
Yeah, I just don't have that kind of patience. I'd rather not catch them, frankly. But it's changed the game in so many ways, and I don't even fish open water really anymore because of it. I used to do that. You just go willy-nilly cast in open water. I started that. That used to be a big spring topic for my seminars. I'd write about that too. If you're not catching them on structure, there's going to be suspended muskies, and especially in spring, they'll be suspended pretty high so you can catch them casting. And I go through all that. That's been kind of wiped out for me now.
Wow.
I feel like I'm totally unarmed going out there just casting willy-nilly. And yeah, you basically don't see that at all anymore. I mean, the people that are out looking for those, which... And here again, how do you blame people?
Right,
and especially how do you, once they've used it, I mean, that is just absolutely going out there unarmed. Once you've done it, it's almost impossible to go back if you've done it a lot and gotten really good at it.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed, and anybody that, it's kind of funny. There's a lot of hate, in the bass world about guys that just do it almost exclusively, and they call them scopers, and so there's but what I've noticed, and just the fact of like you're looking down at the screen so much and you're not just looking out, like when it's really interesting. You kind of take it for granted when you don't have forward-facing sonar. You're casting and you're looking up. When you're on forward-facing sonar, when you're like dang it, I'm saying facing forward sonar.
There you go.
Anyway, so like when you're using it for the first time, like I was. And I kind of had those same kind of thoughts, shouldn't you be looking up from your screen and, don't you love nature? Isn't that part of why you're out here? You love the outdoors, you see the beautiful fall colors. And what happens is you become so in tune to that thing. It becomes such a crutch, I guess. It's just, it's more than a crutch. It's just like, it's having eyes throughout the whole water column. So it's really, you get to a point where it's kind of like, it's hard just to sort of, when you have it down in the water, you know, I've got mine on a pole. You're like, I'm blind now if you don't have it. You know, it's like, I don't know. I don't even know. And it's also even with cover, it's with structure. You're like, you kind of get a sense too. What I found is I'll see a fish at like 50 feet. So I'll have the range out to like between 80 and 110 feet or something like that, you know? And you get a sense of like, okay, that fish is, that's a little bit too far out for a cast for me. And I'm not even looking up, you know? I'm just still looking at the graph I found. Like this was happening on this past Friday. Then I'd see like, okay, that fish is at 30, 35, 40. All right, I can rip that cast out there. And I just, boom, I wouldn't even look. I'd rip the cast out and kind of know the amount of force I'm using. That's probably a 35-foot force of a cast. And then bloop, I'd see it, and it was like, yep, that's right. You know, like it's just strange. I never thought I'd be fishing this way before. You know, and I'm not necessarily like, I see the real harm in it potentially. So I'm not like fully on board with it. And you know, even though I bought it and everything, and it's just, it's bizarre to be just kind of just stuck in your screen so much, and even making casts, you know, with it, knowing that there's a fish out 30 feet, and it's just like, I'm gonna keep on looking at that fish and rip out a cast, and then see, oh, there your lure's going down to it. You know, you don't need to look up as much as you, like, I mean, you hardly need to look up is my point, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's, besides the shock being eliminated, that's the other thing. I like to be able to look around, and if you're going to be good with it, you got to be looking at the screen all the time. I'll never forget, I fishing with a young guy here a couple of years ago that's really good with it and uses it, and a friend of mine, and I literally watched him doing a figure eight, and I was amazed how good of a figure eight he was doing, because he was literally looking at the screen the whole time. I'm like, how in the hell?
Wow.
I'm thinking, how are you doing this great figure eight? And he's not even looking. He's staring at that screen, looking at it.
No kidding.
Like, wow. Yeah.
Was he? Yeah. Could he see on the forward sonar? Could he see how big his turns were? Like how wide his turns were with it?
I assume so. He did amazingly well. He eventually blew out of the water with his bucktail, but he had been going along. He was doing great figure. I was absolutely amazed. I couldn't believe it. But I remember thinking, I'm like, well, I just don't want to do that.
Right. No, I hear you. No doubt, for sure. Well, we could talk fishing, you know, for so long, but you only have so much time, and we need to get to, a more pressing, it's not more pressing, I don't mean that, but it may be more controversial topics, even more so than Ford Sonar.
Only.
Yes, I did. I'm not saying the F word anymore. The other F word. So we, through the years. So just to give you if you haven't heard a podcast with Pete and I before, we go way back. I've been filming Pete Maina. Started first out of Bass Pro Shops. Pete had worked. He was, sponsored by Bass Pro Tracker Marine, and so I was working at Bass Pro Shops as a videographer, and so I got to first meet Pete that way, and then Pete was working with the Next Bite, and I was their videographer. So just a ton of a time with Pete in a boat and on the road, in a truck, and just talking about everything, not just fishing. And I think that's kind of this podcast. I like to try to, mix that in there. To me, fishing, what's great about fishing is that when you got a buddy out on the water, of course you're going to talk fishing, right? You're going to talk about all things fishing, but inevitably, and this always happens, every fishing buddy, you're going to talk about other stuff, sometimes really ridiculous stuff. That's part of what makes fishing so much fun. And then, of course, politics is going to be a part of that, too. Pete and I have had great conversations about I think, and we're very like-minded in many ways politically. I think we're both fed up with the government. I think, you'd have to be blind not to see that your government is not your friend. I don't know how many Freedom of Information Act, revelations there needs to be before people start to go, this whole government of mine isn't, not really looking out for my own best interests exactly. It's like, it's amazing how, I just find it especially amazing now, after COVID and everything, that there's still people that just don't, still have such a trust in government, and authority. And I'm like, so I just wanted to get kind of your thoughts as we're ending this podcast, on a few things. I know you need to get going here pretty soon, but I needed to ask just where your head's at, okay? I'm just going to, so it's this, I got this written down. Why, Pete, why haven't the Epstein files been released, number one, okay? I thought they were promised to us in this administration. Why is Anthony Fauci still not in prison, okay? We know about the emails. Obviously, he was like, it was Anthony Fauci, in case you don't know, and this is very easy to look up here, everybody, is that he was funding gain of function research, which is tweaking viruses to make them more, more infectious and more deadly. Okay, and they were messing with them at the Wuhan lab in China. He was over that. Okay, there's emails that show that once COVID showed up, they're like, oh my God, this looks a lot like that stuff that we were messing with. The gain of function stuff we were doing. We need to make it seem like it came from a bat in a cave. It's all there. It's like, it's blinking like red that he's guilty, and it's like Rand Paul's like all over it. He's like, there doesn't seem to be any kind of accountability. And the other thing, lastly, and maybe this is the biggest one here, Pete, what's up with Charlie Kirk? That's another, it's so obvious, like they're not telling us the truth here on this whole thing. There's a lot of nonsense with the FBI and this whole Charlie Kirk assassination. So I'm just going to throw it to you. Give me your thoughts. I want to hear them. You're a great conspiracy theorist, and I am also a conspiracy theorist. So I want to hear where your head's at.
Well, I guess we'll go back a little farther. Some people have noticed, I guess, that I wear a tinfoil hat, but it actually started 25 years ago with old George W. with me was my wake-up call on 9/11, and Rumsfeld announces the day before the trillions that the Pentagon can't figure out, and then these buildings all collapse, some that planes never even hit, and common sense at that point really started kicking in. Oh, and that Silverstein guy that just happened to recently purchase the buildings and take out a huge insurance policy, he got real rich. And the Patriot Act, it still disgusts me unbelievably that they called it the Patriot Act when it was literally the most unconstitutional thing ever produced to take away your freedoms in the country. All of that started me, I guess, off down the road of thinking for myself and studying and looking into things. And I think I've had to hide it for 20 years for the most part, because most people look at you when you start talking about stuff like I just talked about, and, they look at you like you got a rack of moose horns literally growing out of your head in real time, and they think you're absolutely nuts. But I believe that there's no one alive that hasn't been lied to basically about everything. I believe it started with the Federal Reserve, and yeah, there's some nasty evil forces basically been running the earth all this time, frankly, and I think it's starting to get exposed right now. There's a tremendous amount of confusion, but like, you mentioned Epstein, and that's horrible, and yeah, there's back and forth, the files are supposed to come out, but to me Epstein was a pawn in a much bigger thing, the Epstein files themselves. I mean, that's Mossad, Israel, where all that came from, and I think it'll eventually all come out. I think it's pretty frustrating, though, dealing with what you're talking about. Obviously, things like, you mentioned COVID earlier. That really should have been the wake up call. I understand most people want to be able to trust the news, trust the government. It's the way things should be, right? And you don't want to even have to go down that road once you start thinking about different things and try and follow the rabbit holes, because the single biggest problem when you are thinking for yourself is trying to figure out who the hell's telling the truth. And it's really hard. But eventually your common sense takes you to, certain things and just digging. It's just like, and then the whole idea of politics, what a joke. They've tried to separate people for years and years, and one way they've done it, of course, is race, which is one of the silliest topics on earth I've ever heard, because people have been pulling down their pants for thousands of years and never paying all that much attention to the exact race of the other person. But it's one of these things that politics itself, I mean, the whole idea that a Democrat or a Republican's better, they're all totally corrupted. They're all totally bought and paid for. It doesn't matter which party. They started the illegal voting system. Essentially, those machines started in 97, and they've been cheating and voting ever since. And if you actually do ever get a patriot in office, which is just about never, they will immediately primary him out in the next term anyway with somebody that'll toe the line. So, I think all of that stuff has been going on for a long time. And obviously medicine, doctors, the sports unit, movie, music, it's all been infiltrated, and unfortunately even partially in the military, by bad folks, working for the real bad folks. And I don't know. I think we'll get answers on some of this stuff, because certainly the Charlie Kirk thing. I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what happened there. But here again, if you've crossed the line to using your own brain, if you watched what you saw and they fed you, 30 caliber, 200 yards and this, that, and the other, I immediately I was like, well, that didn't happen, at least not like that. Right. But and Anthony Fauci should have been in jail a long time ago. He's a menace to humanity and killed and tortured animals and a lot of people, and it's really a hard thing. We'd need about 2 weeks straight in the boat muskie fishing. The great thing about muskie fishing is it allows for a lot of additional discussion, because they just about never bite. And there's a lot to go over, but I think it's really interesting now. To me, I don't think you're getting full truth from any side of anything right now. There's literally an information war going on, and trying to sort out truth from fiction is really kind of tough. But there's more and more coming out all the time, and I really, it seems to me like we're probably going to get to the bottom of this in the next little bit, I think, maybe in the next year. As crazy as that sounds, I understand your frustration about, nothing being out on Anthony and the Epstein files and all of that, but I think it's coming.
Well, the good thing I would say with all of the turmoil and, I think just like podcasts are probably one of the big reasons why more people are wise to it. Seems like, especially the younger generation, I've seen some conservatives get asked some questions recently, after kind of the wake of Charlie Kirk. I think it was Glenn Beck. He was asked some pretty difficult questions from some young students at a college that I just don't think you'd hear before podcasts. I think what's happening is this younger generation has such a just the internet's always been a part of their life, and the mainstream, it's not mainstream, let's call it legacy media. Legacy media isn't a thing to them. They're not, they're getting their information off the internet. And some people, I would say older people, they would say that, there's nothing but conspiracies online, and you could just go down these terrible rabbit holes, and there's so much disinformation and misinformation and malinformation on the internet. They're not getting good information. And the reality of that is they're getting better information. It's not like, these are human beings. It's not like, I think there's just almost like a knee-jerk reaction to these people that don't think conspiracies are real, to think that someone that goes and does their own research on the internet is just an idiot, And no, it's like, if you're a curious person, the internet is an amazing place because you're going to be able to find things that you wouldn't have been able to find before. You wouldn't have been able to find 20 years ago. It would have been difficult to find. You'd have to go to the public library and microfiche, and blah blah blah, and nothing. You know what I mean? Like, the internet is an incredible resource that's just never existed to humanity before. And so, if you're a curious person, you really want to find the truth or get closer to the truth, the internet really allows for it. And what we had before was we only had legacy media, and I think a lot of the evidence now points to the legacy media was often just propaganda, just straight up propaganda, but that's all we had. So that was the narrative that that's all we had. That was the narrative that we all went with. And what the internet's now shown people is that no, there's many more layers to stories, and you find that often you've been lied to. And I think the younger generation is wise to this, and that gives me a lot of hope. And I'm hoping that it's like there's no turning back from it. There's just too many eyes that have been opened, For me, yeah. And so I like your optimism there. I can see that happening. I do see a lot. I think we might have reached just a threshold, Pete, where there's just the I'd say what's happened in the past is that just the ruling class has run the narrative,
Absolutely.
And so now they just don't have that control anymore. And that's why they're so hell-bent on, digital ID. And, what's happening in the UK is just absolutely bonkers right now. And this is all just started happening really full force during COVID, with digital ID, central bank digital currency, the vaccine passports. I just all saw that as them trying to weasel their way into getting all these ways to just clamp down on the population because they're losing control. They're losing control of the narrative. And so, yeah, I'm optimistic as long as we cannot allow, number one, digital ID cannot happen. That's got to be the hill to die on. No digital ID. This whole real ID nonsense in, this year that you have to have a real ID, a federal ID to get on a plane. I'm like, go pound sand. So I just got a passport. I'm not saying that's any better really, but it's just like, I know what they're trying to do here, Pete. You know what I mean? And so I commend you for like really being way ahead of everybody, really. And, you know, you talked about like what woke you up. I came much later, but what woke me up was Building 7 of the World Trade Center.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, it had been like, and it was like 2013 is when I learned about Building 7, Building 7 collapse. Building 7, if you're not aware, Building 7, free fall collapse at 5 p.m. on September 11th, 2001, after the towers had fallen that morning. Here's a building that had just office fires in it on 2 floors, and they weren't raging on both floors. There were just fires. And that's the official government explanation of why Building 7, watch the footage, it just completely collapses. It looks exactly like a controlled demolition because it was a controlled demolition. It was a controlled demolition. So, you know, when you have that realization in your life, it really changed me, Pete. I can't really describe it any better than that. It absolutely changed me as a person. And because I looked at the world completely different. I looked at like, if this is possible, then I have to then question who's in power, who's authority, who is telling me how I should view the world. And so that's why, like, and I had already several years after my becoming red pilled, if you will, about Building 7, when COVID came around, I was like, no, I'm not buying this. We're not going down this road, you know. So I commend you for really just being a very curious person and just being smart and doing research and just figuring it out for yourself. You know, it says a lot about you. And I appreciate you, man. Like, I really, really do, Pete. Like, in just the fact that, you know, to me, you embody what it is to be an American. You're not supposed to just, you know, like just give into authority. There's nothing more un-American than that. And just bending over and taking it, you know. You know, question the powers that be, you know. And so I don't know. I just I've always enjoyed our conversations on stuff like that, and I appreciate your viewpoint. And we're basically in lockstep, dude. I agree with everything you said, 100%.
Yeah, well, freedom's just super important. You know, it's amazing what people are willing to give up, and obviously that COVID was a big test case. But one thing I'd like to say before we jump off here is the one big thing that I think is super important is how they've tried to divide us. I talked about that earlier, and of course the big one is politics. This whole thing that people they've never wanted people to understand how powerful they are together. And that's why the politics thing and the religion thing and the race thing and the masks and no masks and vaxxed and no vaxxed, they do everything to separate us. And if people understand that they've literally been lied to about basically everything, understand that certainly these politicians currently in place, none of them can be trusted. And your neighbor, whether you feel like they're completely on the opposite side of the spectrum, thinking wise right now, if you're the wildest conservative and you think all the liberals are dummies, and if you're more liberal and you think all the more conservative people are dummies, that makes us all dummies. Together, we're stronger, and we can trust one another a hell of a lot more than we can trust any of these politicians and people in control that have been paying off the media to tell us these lies for years. And there's nothing more powerful than all the people standing together. And certainly in America, more than some places, don't have the same constitution. But still, it's the same story everywhere. At the end of the day, if the people are standing together in agreement for freedom, plain and simple, even though we'll never agree on everything, I always think the silliness of the whole race thing. They've tried to pigeonhole these certain races. Well, they all think the same. That's the dumbest stuff ever. But you can get together certainly on the most important things: freedom, family. Everybody, no exceptions, wants the best for their kids, grandkids, and the younger people that they know. And we're more powerful than we realize. And that whole politics thing is one of their biggest weapons to separate people. And frankly, you can't trust any of them anyway. So just get that out of your mind and, start thinking for yourself and start working with other people to make it happen.
Absolutely right. I think that's a great sentiment to end on here, and I couldn't agree more. We have there's far more of us than them, and yes, they want it's divide and conquer. It's absolutely divide and conquer. And what ways can we separate people and label people so they'll be fighting with each other? Your neighbor is not your enemy. Your neighbor is not your enemy. Just that's, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love thy neighbor. These are great, great words to live by. And remember them because your neighbor is not your enemy. Your neighbor is the one lying to you, sending you off to war for absolute, like the most evil. I get so upset about it, Pete. I can't even, it just upsets me so much that there's people out there that would just lie. And so blatantly, and because they have agendas and they don't care about your sons and daughters going off to war and dying for mostly their economic reasons. It's always some lie about humanitarian. It's just, and it's so traitorous, treacherous. These are traitors that have done this, and I'm speaking more recently, just in this century, the wars that have occurred, just absolute blatant lies, and young people that have trust in authority that don't have enough life experience, just lambs to the slaughter. It makes me so mad that I really hope these people get what's coming to them that have done these things to, there needs to be accountability, Pete. And again, it's like people need to focus their attention on the real enemy and just not their neighbor. So you have, your words were very wise, and I think they're the right way to end this podcast. So, yeah, I knew I knew this would kind of get serious at the end, but I love talking about this stuff because I agree 100% with you, Pete. And yeah, keep up the fight, my friend. I think I hear chickens. Do I hear chickens?
Well, we got dogs piling in right now, but yes, we have a flock of almost 70 turkeys and chickens.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So you are self-sufficient. That's one of the things I absolutely love about you. So keep on.
There will be no mRNA in our meat.
Yes. I love it. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Pete. And I love you, dude. I really do. And it's been too long since we talked. I apologize for that. But thanks for doing this podcast. And say hi to Esther and all your animals for me.
She's standing right here waiting.
Hi, Esther.
Go on a dog walk.
All right, yeah. Cool. Yeah, I need to take my dogs too. Hi, Esther. Yeah, I got to do that too. So, well, I love it, Pete. I love you, dude. And yeah, keep up the fight, man. Just do what you do, and I love it, man. So we'll at some point we'll need to fish together. I don't know when that will be, but if you're ever in my neck of the woods, I'm in your neck of the woods, I'll hit you up.
Yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about as always.
Ain't that the
truth? All right, man. Well, thanks.
All right. Thank you, brother. Take care, dude.
All right, man.
Bye-bye.